The neighbors heard the screaming before they saw anything. It was a cold Saturday morning on the south side of town when Mabel's life shattered right in front of her one-room apartment. Mr. Kelvin, the man she had loved since she was 16, was dragging her bags into the street like they meant nothing. And in her arms, their one-year-old baby, Jamal, crying, confused, clinging to his mother's chest. "What did I do, Kelvin?" Mabel cried, her voice breaking. "What did I do to deserve this?" Kelvin didn't answer. He didn't even look her in the eye. He just tossed the last bag into the street and slammed the door. From inside the house, a woman's voice rang out, sweet but sharp. "Baby, don't let her stress you. She needs to leave before I call the cops." That voice didn't belong to Mabel. It belonged to June, the light-skinned, high-heeled beauty who had shown up just a month ago and turned Kelvin into a stranger. Neighbors gathered. Some whispered. Others stood frozen. No one dared step in. This wasn't just a breakup. This was betrayal, in its purest form. Kelvin used to be different. He may not have been rich, but he had a smile that could melt ice, and words that made you believe in tomorrow. Mabel saw potential in him when no one else did. She stayed with him even when he couldn't pay rent, even when he lost job after job. She worked the roadside selling fruits and snacks just to keep the lights on. And when she told him she was pregnant, he cried. Said he'd do better for them. But he didn't. At least not for her. Everything changed when June arrived. She pulled up in a red Lexus one day, asking for directions. She looked lost, or maybe she was hunting. Kelvin saw her. She saw him. And in that 1 minute, something shifted. June said she owned a clothing empire. Said she traveled often for business. Wore designer bags, had expensive nails, and always smelled like rich perfume. Kelvin didn't ask too many questions. She started picking him up. He stopped coming home. When he did, he came back smelling like her. Then came the big blow. June said she was pregnant. And suddenly, Mable and baby Jamal became a distraction to Kelvin's future. I ain't got time for broke energy, he told Mable one night. You still out here selling oranges and plantains while I'm building with a boss lady. She thought it was a joke. It wasn't. That's how she ended up on the street, holding their baby, while June stood behind Kelvin with her arms crossed, belly small but showing, a smirk on her face like she had just won. But what none of them knew, what not even June realized, was that this was just the beginning. For the next few days, Mable and baby Jamal slept in shelters. She cried at night, not for herself, but for the baby. She was hurt. Humiliated. But she wasn't broken. You gon' see one day, she whispered to Jamal under her breath as they laid on a cold mattress. God gon' show them. She started taking small cleaning jobs in the mornings, then used that money to sell her fruit stand again in the afternoons. Sometimes she didn't eat so Jamal could. Some days were bad. But some were worse. Still, she showed up. Every day. While Kelvin was flexing fake wealth on social media, posting pictures with June at fancy restaurants, Mable was grinding in silence. And June. She was growing tired. Because behind the lipstick, fake smile, and belly bump, June had a secret too. She wasn't rich. Never was. That red Lexus? Borrowed from a cousin who was tired of chasing her for gas money. That clothing empire? A lie she told to trap a man. The pregnancy? Let's just say it wasn't what Kelvin thought it was. But Kelvin didn't see that. He was too drunk on the illusion. He had kicked out the woman who built with him from nothing, for a woman building nothing but lies. A year passed. Then another. Then something happened that flipped everything. And it started with a phone call. Is this Mable James? A woman's voice asked one rainy afternoon. Yes, speaking. This is Bernice McKinley. I run the local women's startup fund. We came across your roadside hustle online. It's gone viral. Mable paused, confused. Viral? Yes, Bernice said, chuckling. Someone recorded you hustling in the rain with your baby strapped to your back. It touched people. We'd like to meet you. We want to help you grow your fruit business into a brand. At that moment, everything inside Mable shifted. This wasn't pity. This was purpose. She hung up the phone, looked down at Jamal, and whispered, "It's our time now, baby. It's finally our time." The walls of lies started crumbling, but June didn't notice. She was too busy taking mirror selfies in Kelvin's worn-out apartment, pretending it was hers. Too busy tagging fake brands and pretending to host business meetings at coffee shops she couldn't afford. Too busy feeding Kelvin dreams while her own stomach stayed hungry. And Kelvin? He still believed her. Even when the electricity got cut off and she said the bill slipped her mind. Even when her car mysteriously got towed and she blamed jealous haters. Even when she asked him to lend her a few $100s to invest in a new line that never came. Kelvin didn't ask questions. Because pride makes you blind when you're chasing an image. But let's rewind for a second. Mable, she was on the rise. After that surprise phone call from Bernice McKinley, Mable got invited to a local women's entrepreneurship conference. She almost didn't go. She didn't have proper shoes, her wig was old, and she felt small. But something in her said, "Go anyway." She showed up late, holding Jamal on her hip and wearing her cleanest clothes. People stared. Some smiled. Others looked confused. But when she was asked to speak, Mable stepped up, held the mic with trembling hands, and told the room, "I was thrown out like trash. Left with a baby and no help. But I didn't fold. I pushed. I prayed. I worked. I'm not here to beg. I'm here to build." The whole room went silent. Then, they stood. Clapped. Some cried. By the end of the event, For Women had offered to sponsor her fruit business with small grants, mentorship, and equipment. Just like that, Mabel's hustle had a name. Mabel's Natural Goods, fresh fruits, juices, and homemade treats. But more than a business, it became a message. You don't have to look rich to build wealth. Meanwhile, back at Kelvin's place, June was struggling to keep up the lie. The fake pregnancy was her biggest tool of manipulation. At first, she used it to get Kelvin to buy her food, pay her bills, and stay loyal. But now, it was time to deliver, and she had no baby bump to show. That's when things got messy. Kelvin started asking questions. "Why you still flat, June? It's been months." June laughed it off. "Every woman's different, baby. I'm just carrying light." But Kelvin wasn't buying it anymore. One night, he searched her purse and found no prenatal vitamins. No doctor's note. No appointment card. Just receipts from clubs and fast food joints. That's when it hit him. He wasn't the player. He was the one getting played. Kelvin exploded. "You tricked me," he shouted. "You faked a pregnancy just to stay in my house?" June didn't even flinch. She leaned back, arms crossed, chewing gum. "Please," she said. "You think I didn't know you was broke when I met you? You ain't got nothing, Kelvin. Just looks and lies." He stood there, stunned. "You kicked your baby mama and child out for me," she continued. "That told me everything I needed to know. If you could throw them away, you'd throw me away too. So yeah, I lied. But guess what? You deserved it." Kelvin grabbed his keys and stormed out, leaving June alone. For the first time in years, he felt empty. Not broke. Not heartbroken. Just used. Days passed. Then weeks. Kelvin tried calling June. No answer. He showed up at her friend's place. She was gone. No job. No money. No home. He had lost it all chasing a lie. And worse. He realized he had destroyed the one person who ever truly loved him, for a woman who never did. One night, walking past a small food truck near the city center, he saw a line of people wrapped around the block. Curious, he walked closer. On the side of the truck were the words, "Mabel's Natural Goods, from the streets to the stars." He froze. Behind the counter was Mable, in a clean apron, smiling, passing out fruit cups with little Jamal sitting beside her, helping her count cash. She looked different. Healthier. Happier. Stronger. He didn't look at her. But she saw him. Their eyes met. She didn't flinch. She didn't wave. She didn't cry. She just looked at him, like he was nobody. And that hurt more than any slap could. Kelvin walked away that night. No words. No apology. Because deep down, he knew. He lost her forever. But that was only the beginning. Because while Kelvin was crumbling, Mable was about to go global. The morning Mable made the front page of the local newspaper, she didn't even know it. She was too busy chopping pineapples and bagging fruit for an early morning catering order. Jamal was now 4 years old, smart, bold, and full of questions. He sat on a crate near the truck, peeling oranges with tiny hands while his mother worked. "Mama, why that lady talking our picture again?" he asked, pointing to a woman across the street. Mable looked up, squinting. She wiped sweat off her forehead with the back of her hand. "That's just another reporter, baby," she said. "Don't worry. Just smile." The truth was, people couldn't get enough of her story. Mable, the fruit lady who once slept in shelters, was now being called the Fruit Queen of Southville. Her story had gone viral again, this time not from pity, but from inspiration. One of her loyal customers, a high school teacher, had written a blog about how Mable always had kind words for struggling kids, and how she once gave away all her fruit for free during a local protest. The blog got shared, then reposted, then picked up by the city's biggest newspaper. And just like that, Mable became a symbol, not of struggle, but of strength. That same week, she got a call from a downtown restaurant manager. "Miss Mable, we'd like to carry your juices on our menu. The mayor's been asking about you." She couldn't believe it. Mable, the same woman who used to cry herself to sleep with Jamal curled up beside her, was now delivering fruit blends to high-end restaurants, schools, and yoga studios. But she didn't change. She still woke up at 5 a.m., still packed everything herself, still hugged every customer like family. And every Sunday, she went back to the same church she and Kelvin used to sit in, back when life was simpler and promises were still being made. But let's not forget Kelvin. After June disappeared, life hit him hard. He tried to get work but had no real skills. He stayed on friends' couches until they got tired of feeding a grown man with no plans. He finally got a warehouse job, lifting boxes for minimum wage. Every night, he came home sore, bitter, and full of regret. The lies he believed, the woman he trusted, the life he thought he deserved, gone. One day, while scrolling on his cracked phone, he saw a post about a new women's business expo downtown. The headliner, Mable James, keynote speaker. His chest tightened. She stood in the photo in a sleek green suit, glowing, confident, holding a mic in one hand and Jamal's little hand in the other. The caption read, "From fruit stand to franchise, meet the woman who turned pain into power." Kelvin dropped his phone. For a moment, he thought about showing up. Maybe standing in the back. Maybe catching her eye. Maybe, just maybe, she'd talk to him. But deep down, he knew that door was closed. And it was his fault. Back at the expo, Mable stood in front of hundreds of women. Some rich, some broke, some young, some old. But they all leaned in, listening as she told the truth. "I wasn't supposed to make it. I was left with nothing but a baby and a prayer. But I didn't fold. I didn't fake. I didn't chase people, I chased purpose." The crowd erupted in applause. Some women wiped tears. Jamal stood at the edge of the stage, grinning proudly. He may not have understood every word his mama said, but he felt every drop of her strength. After the speech, a woman approached Mable backstage. She looked polished, powerful, and calm. "Hi, I'm Regina White," she said. "I run a chain of health food stores up north. We want to carry your products in every one of them." Mable gasped. You serious? Dead serious? Regina smiled. Your story sells, but your spirit? That's rare. Mable looked down at her hands, scarred from cutting fruit, hardened by work, and for the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt chosen. Meanwhile, June was back in town. Broke. Bitter. Pregnant again. This time, for real. No man. No home. No one to lie to anymore. She saw Mabel's face on a billboard and nearly choked on her cheap coffee. She remembered laughing at her. Remembered calling her broke energy. Remembered feeling like she had won. But now, Mable had become everything she pretended to be. As for Kelvin, he stayed quiet. Sometimes he'd walk past one of Mabel's new juice stands, watching from across the street. He never approached. Never waved. Because now, he was the outsider. And deep down, he knew. Mable didn't just survive. She transformed. And she didn't do it for revenge. She did it for herself. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when the past knocked on Mabel's door. Literally. Mable had just finished setting up her new shop on the west side. It wasn't a truck this time. It was her first brick-and-mortar store, with real walls, painted signs, and a custom juice bar made from what a neighbor had helped her sand down. She had built this place with her hands, her hustle, and her faith. And now it stood tall, proud, and full of color. Mama, someone at the door. Jamal yelled from the back room where he was coloring. Tell them I'll be right there, she called, drying her hands. She walked out front expecting a customer or delivery man. But when she opened the door, it was Kelvin. Wet from the rain, hands in his pockets, eyes low like a child caught stealing. Mable, he whispered. Time stopped. Mable didn't move. She didn't blink. Her face didn't show anger or joy, just calm. What are you doing here? She asked softly, her voice steady like a still river, but there was a storm under it. I ain't here to cause no drama, Kelvin said. I just wanted to see you. See Jamal. She leaned against the doorframe. It's been almost 4 years. And now you remember you have a son. I've changed, he muttered. Have you? She asked. Or did life just beat you down enough that you needed to remember who cared for you before it all fell apart? Kelvin's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't have a response. Because everything she said was true. Mama, who's that? Jamal peeked from behind the door, eyes wide and curious. Kelvin dropped to one knee, tears filling his eyes. Hey lil man. You remember me? Jamal looked at him for a long time. Then he turned to Mable. Mama, why he crying? Mable bent down and looked Jamal in the eye. That's someone from the past, baby. Someone who forgot us for a long time. Jamal stared at Kelvin again, then slowly stepped back, hiding behind his mama. That simple move broke Kelvin's heart. He stood up and wiped his face. I ain't here to beg. I know I messed up. I'm sorry, Mable. She folded her arms, not angry, just tired. You left me and your baby on the street, for a lie wrapped in makeup and perfume. You let a woman humiliate me while I held your son in my arms. You threw us out like trash. Kelvin's hands shook. I was stupid. You were selfish, she said sharply. And selfish men break everything they touch. There was silence. Then she opened the door wider, not to let him in, but to let him see. See the polished counter. The fruit crates stacked neatly. The workers in matching shirts. The customers smiling, sipping smoothies. She didn't have to say it out loud. This was the life she built without him. And it was better than anything they could have had together. I came to say sorry, Kelvin said again, voice cracking. Not to fix anything. Just to tell you I see it now. You were the real queen. Not her. You always were. Mable looked at him, eyes soft but firm. Thank you for saying that. But I stopped waiting for your apology a long time ago. Kelvin nodded, stepped back, and gave one last look at Jamal. Then he turned and walked away. And for the first time, Mable didn't feel broken watching him leave. She felt free. Later that evening, as she tucked Jamal into bed, he asked quietly, "Mama, is that man gonna come back?" Mable smiled. "Maybe. Maybe not. But it doesn't matter. Because we're gonna keep moving forward, okay?" Jamal nodded. "You strong, Mama." She kissed his forehead. "So are you." But the past wasn't done just yet. Because a week later, as Mable was closing up the store, a sleek black car pulled up. A woman stepped out in heels and sunglasses, belly round with pregnancy. It was June. Her hair wasn't done. Her nails were chipped. She wore a borrowed dress that didn't fit. But her mouth, still sharp. "Well, well, well," June said, pulling off her shades. "Look who forgot where she came from." Mable raised a brow. "Didn't expect to see you again." June smirked. "I came to talk business." Mable almost laughed. "You? Business?" June stepped closer, eyes wild. "I got ideas. I know how to market. We could partner. I got influence, girl. I just need a fresh start." Mable didn't even blink. "You need healing. And I don't sell that." June's face twisted. "You think you better than me now?" Mable stared her down. "No. I know I'm better than the woman who tricked a man with a fake baby and thought that was power." June's nostrils flared. "You ain't seen the last of me." "I truly hope I have," Mable said, calmly walking back into her store. She locked the door behind her, and this time, the past stayed outside. That night, she looked at the stars through her bedroom window, holding a warm mug of tea. She thought about everything, where she started, what she endured, and who she had become. Not perfect. Not famous. Not rich yet. But free. And finally, she whispered to herself, "Thank you, God, for letting him leave." The sun was barely up, but Mabel's store was already alive. Fresh scents of mango, lemon, pineapple, and ginger floated through the air. Her blenders were buzzing. Customers were lining up outside with reusable cups in hand. It was a typical morning on the block, except now, the block belonged to her. Inside the store, Mable stood behind the counter in a crisp green apron that read, "Mabel's Natural Goods, Real Fruit, Real Fight, Real Flavor." Jamal, now 4 and full of attitude, was sweeping the floor with more energy than skill. "Mama, I cleaned the whole place," he shouted proudly. She laughed. "You missed the corners, but I'll pay you anyway." He grinned. "I want my dollars in juice." "You got it, Mr. Employee of the Month." Since the grand opening of her store, everything had moved fast. The blog posts turned into TV interviews. The TV interviews led to local award shows. Health bloggers, food critics, even politicians were showing up to her juice bar. But she wasn't just selling juice anymore. She was selling her story, her pain, her comeback, her strength. Women from across the city came just to shake her hand. Young girls asked to take pictures with her. One elderly woman cried while hugging Mable and whispered, "You gave me the courage to leave a man who kept me small." But success didn't come without its shadows. Behind the applause were whispers. Old friends suddenly wanted favors. Cousins she hadn't heard from in years started texting, "Remember me?" Haters online called her overhyped and lucky. But Mable knew the truth. This wasn't luck. This was grit, grace, God. One day, a business investor named Carl Jefferson walked into her shop. Mid-40s, sharp suit, polite smile. He ordered a dragon fruit smoothie and stood by the register for a while. "You ever thought about franchising?" he asked casually. Mable looked up from the blender. "Franchising? Yeah," he said. "Taking your brand national. Storefronts in different cities. Maybe your own bottled juice line." Mable wiped her hands and studied him. I'm not interested in losing control of what I built. Carl smiled. That's smart. But what if I told you we'd let you keep full creative power? We just want to invest in your expansion. Help you scale. Make your name nationwide. It was tempting. Very tempting. But Mable didn't say yes. Not yet. Because she had learned something powerful on her journey. Fast money can be fake power. But slow growth builds strong roots. So, she gave him a smile and a business card. I'll think about it. Later that evening, after closing shop, Mable sat in her small but cozy office in the back of the store. She pulled out her notebook, tattered, worn, filled with prayers, quotes, and goals she'd scribbled over the years. One note read, "Just get through today. Believe in small beginnings. One day, Jamal will be proud." She crossed that last one out. He already was. Meanwhile, across town, Kelvin stood behind a fast food counter wiping tables. Grease on his apron, sadness in his eyes. Every now and then, a customer would recognize him from Mabel's past. "You the one who left her, right?" a teenager once asked. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. The shame was his daily meal now. One of his coworkers, a woman named Tasha, had once asked why he always looked so broken. Kelvin just said, "I gave up gold for glitter, and the shine faded fast." And June. She had vanished again. Rumors said she was staying with an aunt, still pregnant, still lying. No one really cared anymore. Her games had run out of players. She was yesterday's smoke. And Mable? She was today's flame. Back in the store, Mable looked at her son, now fast asleep on a makeshift couch, juice mustache on his face, toy truck on his chest. She walked over, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "You're the reason I kept going. You're my why." Then she looked around her store, the wood shelves she built, the recipes she perfected, the name painted on the wall, and she smiled through tears. Not tears of pain, but of power, of peace. The Fruit Queen wasn't just a title the city gave her. It was a crown she earned. One drop of sweat at a time. The call came just before sunrise. Mable was half asleep, her head resting on a pile of invoices, when her phone buzzed on the desk. She almost ignored it. But something told her to answer. "Hello," she whispered, trying not to wake Jamal. A woman's voice came through, smooth and excited. "Hi. Is this Mable James, owner of Mable's Natural Goods?" "Yes, speaking. This is Carla Jackson from the Morning Rise show. We'd love to invite you to tell your story live on national TV." Mable sat up. Wide awake now. National TV? "Yes, ma'am. We saw the segment on your local news station and read your story in the Hustle Women Weekly. Our producers are inspired. We want to fly you and your son out to New York for a special feature." For a few seconds, Mable couldn't speak. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Carla chuckled. "Are you still there?" Yes. I'm here. I'm just surprised. We'll handle your flights, hotel, and everything else. We'll even send a stylist if you need one." Mable blinked. "Okay. Yes, I'll come." 2 weeks later, Mable and Jamal were stepping off a plane in New York City for the very first time. Jamal's eyes were as big as saucers. "Mama, it's like the movies." Mable smiled. "You better believe it, baby. We're the movie now." The network car picked them up and took them to a luxury hotel in Manhattan. The windows were taller than anything Jamal had ever seen. The room had 2 beds, a TV in the bathroom, and a minibar stocked with things Mable couldn't even pronounce. Later that evening, a stylist came to dress her. They fitted her in a soft yellow dress that made her skin glow. Her hair was laid perfectly. Her confidence, even sharper. But it wasn't just about looking good. This was about being seen. Really seen. The next morning, Mable walked onto the set of the Morning Rise show. Lights. Cameras. People with headsets rushing around. Jamal sat proudly in the front row with a juice box in hand, legs swinging, not fully understanding just how big this was. Then the host walked out, Vanessa Hill, the most famous black woman on TV. The crowd cheered as Vanessa hugged Mable. "We are so honored to have the incredible Mable James on the show today," she said, facing the camera. She turned heartbreak into hustle, pain into power. "Please welcome the Fruit Queen of Southville." Mable took a deep breath as the applause filled the studio. Vanessa leaned in. "So, Mable, take us back. How did this all begin?" And Mable told it. All of it. Getting thrown out. Sleeping in shelters. Selling fruits with Jamal tied to her back. Watching her ex walk away for a woman with lies in her lips. Building her first stand. Going viral. Rising from the dirt like a seed finally given sunlight. "I didn't grow because someone watered me," Mable said. "I grew because life buried me, and I decided I wasn't going to die down there." The crowd went silent. Then exploded in applause. Back in Southville, Kelvin was watching the show from the break room of the warehouse. His co-workers were crowded around the TV. Some pointed at the screen. "Yo, that's the lady you used to mess with, right?" Kelvin didn't answer. He just stared at the screen, where Mable sat glowing under bright lights, her voice steady, her story shaking the world. He looked down at his hands, dirty, tired, empty. That could have been their moment. But he gave it up for a lie. The next day, Mable's social media exploded. Over 2.5 million views. 50K new followers. Brand deals in her inbox. People started calling her store non-stop. "Can we franchise your products? Can you speak at our Women's Summit? Can we feature you on Black Business Monthly?" But through all the noise, Mable stayed grounded. She still dropped Jamal at daycare every morning. Still hand-picked her fruits. Still prayed before every day began. Because Mable didn't build for fame. She built for freedom. A few days after the interview, she was back at her store when a young girl, maybe 16, walked in. She looked nervous, clutching her hoodie sleeves. "You okay, sweetheart?" Mable asked. The girl nodded. I saw you on TV. My boyfriend treats me like trash, but I thought it was normal. Then I saw how you made it out. I just wanted to say thank you. I left him today." Mable walked around the counter and hugged her tight. "You did the hardest part," she whispered. "You walked away." Later that night, Mable sat with Jamal, now fast asleep again, and whispered a prayer. "God, thank you. Not for the fame, but for turning my pain into light for somebody else." She didn't need applause. Or magazine covers. Or billboards. She just needed to know she hadn't suffered for nothing. And now, she knew. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the city feels like it's holding its breath. Mable had just finished a mentoring session with some high school girls in the back room of her second store location. They had laughed, cried, and shared stories. One of the girls said something Mable couldn't stop thinking about. "You're not just a businesswoman, Ms. Mable. You're like our second mama." Toe's words sat with her as she stepped outside to get some air. She stood on the sidewalk, sipping from one of her own green smoothies, when a familiar voice called out behind her. "Mable." She turned. It was Kelvin. Same face. Same tired eyes. But this time, he looked worse. His clothes were worn, and his shoes were falling apart. He held a wrinkled folder under his arm. Behind the facial hair and worn-down smile, there was something else in his eyes. Desperation. I been looking for you," he said, his voice shaky. She didn't flinch. "I wasn't hiding." He chuckled softly, then stopped. "Can we talk?" Mable gave a long pause. Then slowly pointed to a bench nearby. 5 minutes. They sat in silence for a few seconds. Cars passed. A little boy rode by on a scooter. Somewhere nearby, a gospel song played from an open window. Kelvin cleared his throat. I lost everything, Mable. After June left, I was lost. Try to get it together, but everywhere I go, your name is everywhere. On signs. On juice bottles. On TV. She said nothing. Just listened. I saw you on the Morning Rise show. You looked like a whole queen. I am, she replied simply. That shut him up for a moment. He took a breath and pulled the folder out from under his arm. Inside was a handwritten business plan, nothing fancy, just a few pages, typed up and stapled together. I've been working on this, he said, pushing it toward her. A small delivery company. I got the name, the routes, even a few places lined up. I need help, Mable. She looked down at the folder, then back at him. You came to ask me for money? Kelvin's face turned red. No, I mean, not just money. I came to ask for a chance. I know I don't deserve it, but Mable, you know me. You know I was never good with business stuff. But I was good with people. I can work. I just need a door to open. Mable leaned back and let out a slow breath. You know what's wild, Kelvin, she said, eyes narrowing. When I was outside, holding our baby in the rain, with nowhere to go, you didn't open a door. You shut one. Kelvin looked down at his hands. But I ain't bitter, she continued. You gave me something no mentor ever could. You gave me the push I didn't know I needed. He blinked, confused. You left me for a lie, and in doing that, I found the truth. About me, my strength, my worth. So thank you, Kelvin. But no, I won't invest in your business. Kelvin's mouth dropped open. I'm not doing this to be petty, she said, calm but firm. I just learned a long time ago, if someone doesn't believe in you when you're at the bottom, they don't deserve to eat with you at the top. He sat back, defeated. So this is it. This is peace, she answered. You walked out of my life once. I'm just making sure the door stays closed this time. Kelvin stood up, his hands trembling. I really messed up, didn't I? Yes, she said without hesitation. But that doesn't mean you can't start over. Just not with me. He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. Take care of Jamal. Tell him I'm sorry. She stood, holding the folder he'd given her. I'll keep this, as a reminder of how far I've come. And Kelvin, he turned back. I do forgive you, but I'll never forget. That night, Mable sat at her desk, Jamal asleep in the next room. She opened Kelvin's folder and read through his plan. It was rough, basic, but there was effort in it. She grabbed a pen and scribbled across the front. Forgiveness is not weakness, but trust must be earned. He didn't throw it away. She filed it under lessons. The next morning, she walked into her store as the staff clapped and surprised her with a cake. Congratulations, boss lady, they shouted. Your third store just hit 100K in sales. Mable smiled, eyes welling up. From selling fruits on the sidewalk, she said, to building an empire, God did that. They all cheered. But deep inside, she knew she did too, because the girl who got thrown out in the rain was now the woman people came to for shelter. It was a night dressed in gold. Downtown Atlanta buzzed with electricity as the annual Women Who Build Gala prepared to honor the most powerful women in business, education, healthcare, and social reform. Celebrities, CEOs, journalists, and politicians filled the grand ballroom like stars in the sky. At the center of it all, under glittering chandeliers and 1,000 camera flashes, stood Mable, draped in a custom emerald green gown that shimmered like royalty. Her hair, coiled into a crown-like bun, glistened with confidence. On her wrist, a bracelet made by her 6-year-old son Jamal. She wore it proudly. Her story was now a movement. From street vendor to a 3-time franchise owner, speaker, author, and founder of a mentorship program for single mothers, Mabel's name had become a symbol of resilience. Women across the country knew her story. They whispered it to their daughters, posted it on vision boards, quoted her during hard times. Let your pain fund your purpose. She had become more than a woman who survived heartbreak. She became a woman who transformed it. As the evening rolled on, awards were handed out one after another. Then came the final award, the most prestigious one of the night. A hush fell over the room. The host, a senator from Georgia, took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's Legacy Flame Award goes to a woman who turned betrayal into blueprints, pain into power, and a cold sidewalk into a multi-million-dollar empire. She didn't just build a business, she built a lifeline for others to follow. The crowd erupted in applause before her name was even called. Put your hands together for Mable Harrison. She stood slowly, heart pounding, and made her way to the stage as camera lights flickered like stars dancing in her honor. As she accepted the Crystal Award, the entire ballroom stood. Some wiped tears. Others whispered to their friends, "That's the woman I told you about." Mable took the mic, cleared her throat, and began. 6 years ago, I was sitting in a shelter with a newborn and no plan. No money. No food. Just pain. I cried until my tears turned into prayers. Then one day, I stopped waiting for someone to save me and decided I'd become the hero I needed. The room held its breath. My story ain't polished. It's not perfect. But it's powerful. And if you're sitting here tonight thinking your story is too messy to matter, I'm here to tell you, your mess is the very foundation God can build miracles on. The audience erupted in thunderous applause. Some stood on chairs. Some sobbed openly. As Mable stepped down from the stage, several women rushed toward her, strangers, yet sisters in struggle. One clutched her hand and said, "You saved my life without knowing it." Backstage, while catching her breath and drinking water, a staff member approached her nervously. Ms. Harrison, you have a guest outside. He says he's family." Mable frowned. "Did he give a name?" "He said, Kelvin." She took a deep breath. "I'll be right out." Out in the hallway, Kelvin stood awkwardly in a borrowed suit. His shoes were dusty, and his tie hung crooked. In his hand, he held a tiny, tattered notebook. When he saw her, his eyes filled with emotion. "I watched everything on the live stream. You were amazing." Mable stood tall. "What do you want, Kelvin?" He handed her the notebook. "It's Jamal's. I had it. I know I had no right to take it, but I kept it. It's full of drawings. Stories. A few about you. One about me, too." Mable flipped through the pages. Little stick figures. A house labeled, Mama's Store. A rocket ship. A picture of her holding his hand with the caption, "My hero." She blinked back tears. Kelvin cleared his throat. "You were always the better parent." "No," she corrected him. "I was just the consistent one." He nodded. Can I ever be a part of his life?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Not on your terms," she said. "But maybe, if Jamal asks for you, I won't lie. I'll tell him the truth. The full truth. And if one day he wants to meet the man who left us in the rain, you better be ready to show up different." Kelvin's lips trembled. "I will. I promise." She took the notebook and walked away. That night, Mable returned home. She kissed her sleeping son on the forehead and whispered, "You're the reason I rise." She placed the award on the mantel and the notebook beside it. Above them both, a sign hung on the wall. It read, "Storms don't break queens. They crown them." And in that moment, everything felt full circle. 3 years had passed since Mable accepted the Legacy Flame Award, and her name was now stamped across the nation. From book deals to talk show interviews, she had grown into a force of inspiration. But nothing shocked her more than the message that popped up on her assistant's phone one rainy Monday morning. "Hi, this is Trisha. Kelvin's ex. I know I'm probably the last person you ever want to hear from, but, please. I need to speak to Mable. It's about my daughter. It's urgent. Mable stared at the screen. Trisha. The woman who stole her husband while she was still bleeding from childbirth? Mable never hated her. No. Hate gives people power. Mable had outgrown her. Still, curiosity and compassion nudged at her. She gave her assistant a single nod. Set the meeting. Public place. Tomorrow. The next day, Mable sat at a quiet corner in a local tea shop. She wore a casual outfit, jeans, flats, a soft beige sweater. Her presence still turned heads, even without makeup or a camera lens. Trisha arrived minutes later. But she wasn't the fierce, high-heeled beauty Mable remembered from the courthouse all those years ago. She looked tired. Hollow. Her skin pale. Her hair pulled into a messy bun. She had a toddler on her hip. Little girl, maybe 2 or 3. No wedding ring. Thank you for coming, Trisha said, voice trembling. Mable offered a slight nod. I assume this isn't about catching up. Trisha sat across from her. No. This is about desperation. She paused, then looked around, embarrassed. I have no one left. My parents cut me off after I left my husband. Kelvin, he's vanished. I haven't seen him in almost a year. No calls. No support. He left me with everything, rent, food, daycare, medical bills. I'm drowning, Mable. Mable blinked, her expression unreadable. And what does that have to do with me? Trisha's eyes welled with tears. I was wrong. So wrong. I destroyed your family because I thought I was winning something. But Kelvin, he's not who I thought. He did to me exactly what he did to you. Abandoned me the moment it got hard. She took a shaky breath. My daughter is sick. Nothing fatal. But she needs a minor surgery I can't afford. I've exhausted every program, every call, every charity. Then someone said, why don't you ask the woman he left for you? Trisha looked down, her voice barely a whisper. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm asking, as a mother. Silence hung like a thick cloud. Mable stared at the woman who once stood triumphantly beside Kelvin as he laughed signing divorce papers. She saw no victory left in Trisha now. No pride. No perfume. Just pain. And it hit her, how similar they had once been. Both women trusted a man who vanished when life got heavy. Both women were left holding babies in a world too cold for mercy. Mable looked down at the little girl. Big eyes, innocent curls, a soft bunny stuffed under her arm. She didn't ask to be part of any of this. And Mabel's heart couldn't turn away. 2 weeks later, the girl had her surgery. Quietly, anonymously funded by a donation from the Jamal Legacy Foundation, Mabel's charity for single mothers and children in crisis. Trisha tried to thank her in a long, emotional message. Mable responded with only one line. Raise her better than we were loved. Trisha never replied. She didn't need to. Some lessons don't need applause. Some acts of kindness are done not for the past, but to free yourself from it. And as Mable walked back into her office that day, Jamal ran up to her with a drawing. Look, Mama. It's us on the moon. She smiled and picked him up. That's where we're headed, baby. The city was quiet that cold October morning. People gathered around a small church on the east side. Old building, cracked bricks, faded blue doors. A black hearse sat parked out front, and the smell of roses hung in the air like a whisper of sorrow. Kelvin was dead. A car accident on the outskirts of town. He'd been drinking, police said. No ID on him, just a wallet filled with expired credit cards, a motel key, and a folded picture of a baby girl. Only 3 people showed up at the funeral. One was a distant cousin. Another was the church caretaker. The third was Mable. And she didn't come alone. When Mable stepped out of the car, the air seemed to pause. She wore a simple black dress, hair in a bun, heels soft against the gravel. Beside her stood Jamal, now 6, holding her hand tightly. On the other side was Trisha, her face solemn, and her little girl, Kira, hugging a teddy bear. Yes. Mable came with the 2 children Kelvin left behind. Not to honor him, but to show the world who truly survived him. The casket sat alone inside the church. Closed. No choir. No flowers. No slideshow. Just a name card. Kelvin James Owens. Beloved by few, forgotten by many. The pastor stood quietly and nodded toward them. Mable didn't cry. She didn't sit. She walked straight to the front pew and took a deep breath. Then, she stepped forward. I wasn't his wife when he died, she began, voice calm. And I stopped loving him long before he stopped pretending to love me. But I was the woman who knew him before the lies became his lifestyle. She turned to look at the 2 kids sitting quietly, Jamal watching her with wide eyes, Kira holding her bunny like it could protect her. These 2, Mable said, her voice firmer now, deserve to know where they came from. But more than that, they deserve to know who raised them after he walked away. She glanced at Trisha, who nodded with teary eyes. Kelvin thought power came from charm, from looks, from being seen with the right women. But real power, she paused, placing her hand over her chest, real power comes from healing, from choosing peace over revenge, from standing tall after being broken. A long silence followed. No one clapped. No one whispered. Just the quiet understanding of closure, finally found. After the service, Mable, Trisha, and the kids walked out together. Outside the church, a reporter tried snapping photos. Mable held up her hand. No comment, she said firmly. Let the dead rest. And let the truth speak through how we live. Then she bent down to Jamal and Kira. You both are more than the choices your father made, she said gently. You are the future we build from here. Jamal smiled. Does this mean Kira is my sister now? Mable smiled, tears filling her eyes. She always was. Conclusion: the woman who became unbreakable. Months later, a billboard stood tall on a freeway in Atlanta. It showed Mable, Jamal, and Kira, all smiling, surrounded by dozens of other single mothers and children. Bold letters read, "The mothers who raised the future." Powered by the Jamal Legacy Foundation. Mable no longer told her story with anger. She told it with purpose. She didn't just survive Kelvin's betrayal, she turned it into a bridge for others to cross. Trisha found a job at the foundation and slowly rebuilt her life with Mabel's help, not as best friends, but as women who grew up the hard way and refused to pass the pain forward. And Kelvin? His name faded into silence. But the women and children he left behind? They rose. Together.